My daughter had turned 9 the previous Thursday. She was the kind of child who moved through the world with her eyes wide open, noticing things adults walked past without a second glance. She had a habit of pausing in doorways to look at a room before entering, as though she wanted to understand it fully before committing herself to walking in. Other children ran ahead, she observed first. The one time my grandmother watched my daughter do this, she laughed quietly and said, "She's a thinker." Good. That was high praise from her, and I had stored it away the way you store things that feel important. It was precisely that quality, the careful, observant stillness, that led her into the back bedroom while the adults filled the louder rooms with conversation. And it was that same quality that brought her back out holding a ring. We were at my parents' house for their annual Sunday lunch. It was the kind of gathering that had once felt genuinely warm and had gradually, over many years, become more obligation than pleasure. The food was always good. My mother was a reliable cook, and the table was set with the same care she had always brought to it, the good plates and the pressed cloth. But there were silences between certain people in that house that had hardened over time into something more permanent than ordinary awkwardness. Fault lines everyone knew the shape of and navigated around without discussing. I had learned to arrive a little late and leave a little early to keep the difficult windows as brief as possible. My daughter had been to enough of these lunches to understand the rhythms of the house. Which rooms were comfortable, which conversations to stay out of, where she was welcome to explore. She found the ring under the dresser in the back bedroom, half hidden by the baseboard, settled in a thin layer of dust as though it had been there a long time without anyone noticing. She came back into the dining room with her palm open and her face alight with the particular pleasure of having found something unexpected. "Mom, look what I found under the dresser." It was just sitting there in the dust. It was a gold band, thin and delicate, with a small cluster of seed pearls arranged symmetrically around the center. I knew it before she had finished speaking. My grandmother had worn that ring every single day of her adult life, on the third finger of her right hand, until the arthritis in her knuckles made it too painful to get on and off. After that, it had lived in the small cedar jewelry box on her dresser, the one that smelled of old powder and something faintly floral I had never been able to identify. Or so I had assumed. Seeing it in my daughter's open hand, slightly tarnished from however long it had been under that dresser, made my chest tighten unexpectedly. Some objects carry people inside them. My daughter tilted her palm toward the light. "It's really pretty." "Whose was it?" "That was your great-grandma's ring," I said softly. I took it and held it for a moment, feeling its weight, remembering exactly how my grandmother's hands had looked wearing it. Strong hands, warm and capable, that had done 10,000 things I would never know about and a handful that I would carry with me forever. That was when my sister Sandra walked over from the other side of the room. She was 3 years older than me and she had always occupied considerably more space in our family than I ever had. Her opinions arrived before she did. Her preferences presented themselves as facts. She had a talent for making it seem as though any other perspective was simply a failure to see clearly, and she had been exercising that talent since we were girls. She reached out and took the ring directly from my hand, the way you might pick up a glass someone had left on a table, without asking, without hesitating, as though the question of whether it was hers to take had not occurred to her. "Where did this come from?" she asked, turning it over and addressing the room rather than my daughter. "Under the dresser in the back bedroom," my daughter said. Sandra looked at the ring for a moment longer. Then she closed her fingers around it. "This is a family heirloom," she said in the tone she used when she was stating something she considered settled. "It belongs with the family." She turned to my daughter with a smile that was carefully constructed to appear generous and did not quite manage it. "Family heirlooms are for real daughters, not for little girls who wander around picking things up off other people's floors." The room went quiet, the particular quiet that falls when something has been said that everyone present heard and no one wants to acknowledge. You become aware of small sounds. The refrigerator, the traffic outside, the creak of someone's chair. My daughter looked at me. She was 9, not naive. She understood the shape of what had just happened, even if she didn't have full words for it yet. I watched it land on her, the small flinch, the careful stillness that came after, the way she looked down at her hands, which were now empty. I had worn that same expression in that same house, in younger versions of this same moment, and seeing it on her face was something I had not been prepared for. My mother suddenly found something requiring her attention at the stove. My father became deeply absorbed in his coffee. 2 of my aunts examined the tablecloth. My cousin produced a brief, uncomfortable laugh that had nowhere to go and died before it could become anything. I looked at Sandra, her fist closed around my grandmother's ring, and I decided something. Hey, I said. I put my hand on my daughter's shoulder. Let's get your jacket. We said our short goodbyes and walked out into the afternoon before dessert was served. My daughter put her jacket on in the driveway without being asked, which was something she rarely did, and I understood that she wanted to be gone from that house as much as I did. In the car, she sat with her hands folded in her lap and watched the neighborhood pass by the windows. She was doing the processing thing she did, working through something quietly, turning it over inside herself the way she turned objects over in her hands when she found them interesting. I did not rush her. After several minutes, she asked, "What did she mean by real daughters?" "She meant something unkind," I said. "It wasn't true." "Was the ring really great-grandma's?" "Yes." "Did great-grandma want you to have it?" I kept my eyes on the road ahead. "I believe she did," I said. "I'm going to make sure of it." That night, after my daughter was asleep and the house was quiet, I went to my closet for the cardboard box I had kept at the back of the shelf since my grandmother's death 4 years earlier. She had died at 87, clear-minded and deliberate to the end, which was entirely consistent with everything she had been throughout her life. She believed in saying what she meant while she still could, and in the weeks before she died she had written letters. Not to everyone. Only to the people to whom she had specific things to leave behind in words. My letter had arrived in a sealed envelope with my name written on the front in her deliberate, upright handwriting. I had opened it on the day of her funeral, sitting in my car before I could make myself go inside the church, because I had known that whatever was in it would undo me, and I wanted that to happen somewhere private. I had read it once, wept over it, folded it carefully back into thirds and returned it to the envelope. Then I had put it in the box with her other things and left it there because grief has its own timing and I had not been ready. I sat on the floor of the closet, took the letter out and read it again. All of it slowly from the beginning. She had written in the plain and careful way she spoke. No unnecessary words, no sentiment for its own sake. Everything exactly as large as it needed to be and no larger. She wrote about her life, the things she was proud of, the people she had loved, and a few things she wished had gone differently. And near the end she wrote about her possessions. She was a practical woman. She wanted her wishes documented somewhere, even if only in a letter. She wrote, "The pearl ring, you know the one, the gold band with the small pearl cluster. I want that to go to you. You have always reminded me of myself at your age. The way you watch things quietly before you speak. The way you love people completely without making a show of it. Keep the ring for your daughter when she is old enough to appreciate it. She has the same careful eyes. I noticed it the first time I watched her look at something properly. She sees what matters. She'll know what to do with it when the time comes." I read that paragraph 3 times. At 11:47 my phone lit up on the floor beside me. "Kinda. I hope you're not planning to make this into something. It's just a ring. You'd better not tell your daughter stories about it." I took a photograph of that paragraph, clear, in focus, every word legible, and sent it to Sandra without adding anything else. It took her some time to respond. When she did, she wrote, "That doesn't prove anything." I put the phone down and sat with the letter a while longer. Then I went to bed. In the morning I called my mother. I told her calmly what my grandmother had written and asked whether she had known. There was a pause that ran longer than it needed to. "She may have mentioned something to that effect," my mother said. "Did you know that last night when you said nothing?" Another pause. "Your sister feels very strongly about these things." "Mom," I said, "my daughter is 9 years old. She was told directly that she doesn't count as a real daughter in front of the whole family. And you turned back to the stove." My mother offered partial sentences and careful qualifications. The language of someone who knows they behaved poorly and has not quite assembled the words to acknowledge it. I listened until she was finished, told her I needed some time and ended the call. That afternoon I reached the estate attorney who had handled my grandmother's affairs. He was semi-retired but remembered her warmly. I described the situation. He told me that a signed, handwritten letter expressing personal wishes, while not enforceable as a formal codicil, was a documented expression of intent that clearly established what my grandmother had wanted. It was, he said, the kind of document that would carry genuine weight in any conversation about the matter. He said that if Sandra refused to return the ring, there were paths forward, and he offered to put something in writing on my behalf if I needed it. I thanked him and told him I would start with the letter itself. That evening I sent Sandra a scan of the full letter. The entire document, not just one paragraph, with a single line above it. Grandma was very clear. Please return the ring by the end of the week. She called me within an hour, not calm. She said things about fairness and about always being overlooked and about how letters written by elderly women can mean many different things. I let her finish. Then I said, the letter says what it says. I'm not going to argue about what it means. I just want the ring back. She said I was making everything about myself. She said I was destroying the family over a piece of jewelry. I'm not overreacting, I said. I'm just not letting it go. Those are different things. And I ended the call. The ring arrived 4 days later in a small padded envelope on my front step. There was no note inside, just the ring in a small bag. That evening I sat with my daughter on the couch and showed her both the ring and the letter. I read the relevant paragraph aloud. She sat very still, listening to it the way she sat still for things that mattered to her. She said, I have careful eyes, my daughter said when I finished. She did. And she wanted me to have it someday. She did. My daughter held the ring for a moment, turned it over once, and then handed it back to me with a calm certainty that reminded me powerfully of my grandmother. You keep it, she said. Until I'm ready. The Sunday lunches remain paused. My mother calls periodically, navigating things carefully, and I am patient with her because she is my mother and because she is genuinely trying. Sandra and I have not spoken since the evening of that phone call, and I do not expect that to change soon. The ring sits in my jewelry box on the small velvet tray. My daughter is in 5th grade now, doing well, still pausing in doorways to understand rooms before she enters them. She has her great-great-grandmother's careful eyes. One day she will have the ring to go with them because that is what my grandmother wanted, and my grandmother had the good sense to write it down. She knew that clarity, offered plainly and in time, is one of the most useful things you can leave the people you love. The living room smelled like pine and cinnamon, the way my mother's house always did in December. She'd had the same wreath hanging above the fireplace since I was 9 years old, slightly lopsided and refusing to be straightened. I used to think that was charming. Standing there on a cold Saturday afternoon, watching my daughter Lily tug at the hem of her holiday dress, I still found it charming, but almost everything else about the afternoon was beginning to curdle. Lily was 6 years old. She had chosen her own outfit for the occasion. A green velvet dress she'd spotted in a shop window 3 weeks earlier and talked about every single day since. She had let me braid her hair that morning, sitting very still and very serious on the bathroom counter, as though she understood this was a special occasion and wanted to honor it. She was the kind of child who took things like that seriously. Holiday dinners. Family photographs. Being included. My family had gathered for the annual photo, a tradition my mother had kept alive for over 30 years. She had albums going back to 1989, photos of people in increasingly dated clothing arranged in front of the same fireplace, the same lopsided wreath above them, the backgrounds shifting only in small ways. A new couch, a repainted wall, children appearing and then growing and then appearing with children of their own. The ritual mattered to her in the way that certain rituals matter to certain people. Not because the photographs themselves were precious, but because the act of making them meant something about continuity, about a family choosing to show up in the same place year after year. There were 12 people in the living room. My parents, my 2 sisters, my brother-in-law, various cousins, and my sister Dana's 3 children. Dana's kids were already arranged near the fireplace, wearing coordinated burgundy and cream. My mother was straightening frames on the mantel. My father was arguing pleasantly with my uncle about whether to use the timer or ask someone to take the photo manually. I had brought Lily every year for the past 4 years. She had been in every photo. She knew where to stand. She walked toward the fireplace naturally, moving to her usual spot between me and my cousin's daughter, and that was when Dana stepped in front of her. Actually, Dana said, not unkindly but with the particular precision of someone who had rehearsed this, we're doing immediate family only this year. Just the blood relatives. Lily stopped walking. I looked at my sister. She's been in every photo since she was 2. I know, and it's always been a little awkward, Dana said, smoothing her blazer. Mom and I talked about it. Family portraits are for real family. We thought it was time to make it official. There was a moment when I believed someone would say something. My mother had turned from the mantel. My father had gone quiet. My aunt was studying the ceiling. No one spoke. A few people gave small, uncomfortable nods, the kind that communicate agreement without requiring anyone to say the words out loud. Lily hadn't moved. She was still standing in the middle of the room, close enough to the fireplace that the light caught the green velvet and made it shimmer. She was looking at me with an expression that no 6-year-old should have. The specific expression of a child who is trying to understand why she has been asked to step out of a room where she believed she belonged. I didn't say anything either. Not in that moment. I walked to her, took her hand quietly and said, "Let's get your coat." She didn't ask questions until we were in the car. Then she asked, in a very small voice, whether she had done something wrong. I told her no. I told her she had done absolutely nothing wrong. I told her she was exactly who she was supposed to be, and sometimes adults made decisions that had nothing to do with the people they affected. I wanted to say more than that. I wanted to explain the whole complicated machinery of family, the way certain people decide without ever quite saying it out loud, that some children matter more than others, and that this is not a reflection of the children but of the people making the decision. But she was 6 and it was cold and the street outside the window was full of lights, and what she needed in that moment was not an explanation. What she needed was not to feel alone. She was quiet for a little while, looking out the window at the lights on the neighboring houses. Then she said she was hungry and asked if we could get hot chocolate. We got hot chocolate. We drove home. I gave her a bath and read her 2 chapters of her book and stayed until she fell asleep, which she did quickly and completely, the way children do when they've decided to stop worrying about something for the night. I sat in the kitchen after that, at the table where I had eaten breakfast for most of my childhood, and answered a few work emails and did not think about my sister. At 11:27 in the evening my phone buzzed on the counter. It was Dana. The message read, "I hope you're not planning to make this into a whole thing. Just a reminder, don't forget who holds your mortgage. Some relationships are worth maintaining." I read it twice. The mortgage she was referring to was on my first property, a small duplex I had purchased 9 years ago, when I was 24 and still learning what I was doing. Dana had co-signed, and for 2 years she had reminded me of it at every opportunity. What she did not know, because I had never told her and had no particular reason to, was that the mortgage had been refinanced and transferred 3 years ago, when I acquired the bank that originally held it. That was not a sentence I had ever expected to type in my own head. But it was accurate. I had spent the better part of a decade building a financial services company quietly and with deliberate patience. I had started with the duplex, then a small commercial property, then a regional investment firm, then a controlling stake in a mid-sized community bank called Meridian Financial. The acquisition had closed 18 months ago. It had been covered briefly in trade publications and not at all in any newspaper my family read. I had not mentioned it at dinner. I had not mentioned it at Thanksgiving or at the birthday party in July, or at any of the Sunday lunches where Dana had occasionally referred to me as being good with numbers, in the slightly condescending tone of someone who considers that a limited skill. The business had grown in the way that things tend to grow when you pay attention to them consistently and resist the urge to announce yourself. I had hired carefully, reinvested aggressively, and made a habit of learning the details of every transaction I touched. I was not a natural risk taker. I was someone who understood risk well enough to manage it, which is a different thing and in many ways more useful. By the time I acquired Meridian, I had a team of 43 people who were genuinely excellent at their work, and I trusted them, and we had built something that operated with very little drama. My mortgage, the original duplex mortgage, had been transferred to Meridian's portfolio during the restructuring. I now held in effect the paper on my own loan, which meant the threat Dana had just texted me from her living room at nearly midnight was a threat she did not have the power to make. I did not respond immediately. I made a cup of tea. I thought about Lily standing in the middle of the living room in her green dress, looking at me with that expression. Then I opened my email and forwarded the acquisition documents to Dana's address. The full filing, the regulatory approval, the transfer records. One document in particular made the ownership structure very clear. I added a single line at the top, "For your records." I sent it at 11:52 and went to bed. She called the next morning at 7:14. I let it go to voicemail. She called again at 7:31. I was making Lily's breakfast, scrambled eggs, the kind with a little cheese in them that she liked, so I let that one go as well. The third call came while Lily was eating her toast and I stepped into the hallway to answer it. Dana's voice was different than I had ever heard it. Not angry exactly. Tighter. The way a voice sounds when someone is working very hard to stay measured. Is this some kind of joke? She said. No, I said. You own Meridian. My company holds the controlling interest, yes. Pause. For how long? The acquisition closed about 18 months ago. Another pause longer. And our mortgage, the duplex mortgage, was transferred to Meridian's portfolio during the restructuring. You're listed as a co-signer on a loan that's administered by a bank in which I hold a controlling stake. That's the current situation. She was quiet for long enough that I checked to make sure the call hadn't dropped. Why didn't you say anything? She finally asked. It was a reasonable question and I considered it honestly before answering. The truthful answer was that it had never seemed necessary. I had not built a financial services company in order to impress my family or to win arguments at dinner. I had built it because I found the work genuinely interesting and because I was good at it and because I had started with a duplex at 24 and found I didn't want to stop. The fact that no one in my family knew about it was not a secret I had actively maintained. It was simply a gap that had never needed to close. Until last night when a gap had opened beneath Lily's feet in the middle of a living room, and I had watched everyone stand around it and say nothing. You sent me a text threatening me over a mortgage you thought you controlled, I said. That seemed worth clarifying. I wasn't threatening you. I was just. You said, don't forget who holds your mortgage. That's what you said. She didn't answer that. Dana, I said, I'm not interested in making this into a legal situation or a financial one. That's not what I want. But I need you to understand that when you sent that message you thought you had leverage over me. And you don't. You haven't for a long time. I think we both needed to know that. So what happens now? She asked. Nothing dramatic, I said. The loan terms don't change. I'm not your landlord and I'm not your bank. Your mortgage is administered the same way it was yesterday. She exhaled. What does change, I said, is that I will not be bringing Lily to family events where she's going to be excluded from photographs and asked to wait outside while the real family gathers. If that policy is going to continue, she and I will make other plans. Mom will be upset. That's something you can discuss with Mom. You made the decision. You can explain it. There was a long silence. Outside the hallway window, I could see the neighbors' kids playing in the first light snow of the season, leaving footprints across the white lawn. I didn't think she would care that much, Dana said. She's 6. She asked me in the car if she had done something wrong. Dana didn't say anything for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice had changed slightly, not dramatically, not into an apology, but into something that sounded less defended. I'll talk to Mom, she said. Hey, I said. I went back into the kitchen. Lily had finished her toast and was drawing on the back of an envelope with a red marker. A house with a large tree and several birds. He held it up when I came in. It's our house, she said. I'm putting a star on top. It's perfect, I said and sat down across from her to finish my coffee. I didn't hear from Dana again that day. My mother called in the evening, a short call, slightly stiff, in which she said she had been thinking about the photograph situation and perhaps they had been hasty. I told her I appreciated her saying so. We talked for a few minutes about other things. The weather, the neighbors, a movie she had watched, and then we said goodnight. 3 weeks later, my mother sent a new family photo in the group chat. It had been taken at a small second gathering, informal, in the living room again. The wreath was still lopsided above the fireplace. Everyone was in it. Lily was standing near the fireplace in a different dress, a red one this time, her own choice, and she was laughing at something just outside the frame, her head tilted back slightly the way it does when something genuinely catches her off guard. I saved it to my phone and looked at it for a long moment. Lily never knew about the text or the mortgage or any of the rest of it. She knew that we had left early that afternoon and gotten hot chocolate, and that 3 weeks later she had gone back and been in the photo. That was the version of events she carried forward. That things had been strange for a moment and then had been fixed. 6-year-olds deserve at least that much continuity. The rest of it, the documents, the acquisition papers, the 1152 email, stayed where it belonged. Not a secret exactly. Just a fact that had been stated once, clearly, at the moment it needed to be stated. And then the ordinary business of things had resumed. My son tried to sit at the main table. My sister sneered. That section is for children with potential. The room snickered. I quietly took our coats and left. At 11:33 p.m. she texted, "Don't forget who owns your shop space." I sent the property management contract and waited. The Thanksgiving dinner had started like any other family gathering. My sister, Jessica, hosted at her sprawling suburban home, the kind with a circular driveway and professionally landscaped gardens. She'd insisted on assigned seating this year, complete with printed name cards in gold calligraphy. My son Marcus, 10 years old and eager to sit with his older cousins, naturally gravitated toward the main dining table, where Jessica's children and our brother's teenagers were settling in. He'd barely pulled out a chair when Jessica's hand landed on his shoulder. "Sweetheart, that section is for children with potential," she said, her voice loud enough to carry across both rooms. "You'll be more comfortable at the kids' table." The kids' table was set up in the kitchen alcove. Plastic plates. Paper napkins. The spot reserved for the under sevens. Marcus looked at me, confusion clouding his face. He was in 5th grade on the honor roll and captain of his soccer team. The cousins at the main table ranged from 11 to 16. By any reasonable measure he belonged there. "Mom," he whispered. Jessica's husband, Tom, chuckled from his position at the head of the table. "Come on, buddy. Let the high achievers have their space. Maybe next year when you apply yourself more." My mother, seated near the fireplace, adjusted her wine glass and said nothing. My brother David gave me an apologetic shrug but didn't intervene. His wife was already ushering their kids to their assigned seats, eager to avoid conflict. I stood up slowly, keeping my expression neutral. Years of family dynamics had taught me that showing emotion only gave them ammunition for later conversations. How I was too sensitive, or couldn't take a joke. "Marcus, get your jacket," I said quietly. Jessica's eyes widened slightly. She hadn't expected this response. Usually I smiled through these moments, made excuses and tried to smooth things over for the sake of family unity. "You're leaving?" "Over seating arrangements." She laughed, but there was an edge to it. "God, you're so dramatic." I helped Marcus into his coat. He was trying not to cry, his jaw set in that way kids do when they're determined to be brave. It broke my heart, but I kept my face calm. "We'll get pizza on the way home," I told him softly. "Don't be ridiculous," my mother finally spoke up. "Sit down. You're making a scene." "We're just leaving quietly," I said, picking up my purse. "Enjoy your dinner." Jessica followed us to the door, her voice dropping to a hiss only I could hear. "You're going to punish your son with your pride?" He could have stayed at the kids' table. I didn't answer. I didn't explain that leaving was exactly the opposite of punishing him, that staying and accepting that treatment would have taught him to accept disrespect as normal. Marcus was quiet in the car. We did get pizza and I let him pick a movie when we got home. By bedtime he seemed better, but I knew the incident would stick with him. These things always did. At 11:33 p.m., my phone lit up with a text from Jessica. "Don't forget who owns your shop space. Lease renewal is coming up in January. Might be time to discuss terms. Family discount might not apply if you keep being difficult." I stared at the message for a long moment. Jessica had always believed she had leverage over me because of the shop. 3 years ago, when I'd been looking for a space to open my custom furniture business, she'd connected me with a property management company she claimed to have connections with. "Family helping family," she'd said. The unit was perfect. A corner spot in a busy commercial district with large windows, high ceilings, and enough space for my workshop in the back. The rent was reasonable. The lease terms were fair. I'd signed eagerly, grateful for her help. She'd held it over me ever since. Every family disagreement ended with some variation of the same threat. "Remember who helped you get that space. Don't bite the hand that feeds you." I could make one call and you'd be looking for a new location. I opened my filing cabinet and pulled out the folder I'd been keeping for exactly this moment. Then I took a photo of the first page and texted it to her. The property management contract, with my name listed as the owner. My phone rang within 30 seconds. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again. And again. The text started coming rapid fire. "What is this? This is a fake document. Call me right now. I'm serious. Call me." I set the phone face down on the kitchen counter and made myself a cup of tea. By the time the kettle boiled, I had 14 missed calls. The truth was simple, though Jessica had never bothered to look into it. The property management company she'd connected me with was legitimate. They managed the building professionally. But the building itself, the actual property, had been purchased by an investment group 7 years ago. An investment group I was part of. I'd started investing in commercial real estate in my mid-20s, long before I opened the furniture shop. Small partnerships at first, pooling money with friends who worked in finance. We bought a struggling strip mall, renovated it, and filled the units with good tenants. The returns were solid. We reinvested and expanded. By the time I was 30, I had equity positions in 4 different commercial properties. The building that housed my shop was our 5th acquisition. When I'd been looking for a space and Jessica suggested this location, I already knew it well. I was the one who approved the renovation budget for the corner unit she thought she was helping me access. I'd never corrected her assumption. I let her think she had power. Let her make her little threats. It was easier than dealing with the family drama that would have come from revealing the truth. But threatening my son's sense of worth? Using her imagined leverage to punish me for protecting him? That crossed a line. My phone finally stopped ringing around midnight. The texts continued sporadically until 2 a.m., progressing from denial to anger to bargaining. You're lying. Where did you get money for real estate? Dad must have helped you. He never helped me. We can talk about this. Don't be rash. I responded to none of them. The next morning I arrived at my shop at 7, my usual time. I liked the quiet hours before opening, when I could work on custom pieces without interruption. I was sanding a cherrywood desk when my property manager called at 8:15. Good morning, Sarah. I got a very confused call from a woman named Jessica claiming to be your sister. She was asking about lease terms and seemed to think she had some authority over your tenancy. What did you tell her? That I couldn't discuss lease details with anyone except the tenant or the property owner. She asked to speak to the owner, so I told her you were both and that she could take it up with you directly. Perfect. Thank you, Tom. No problem. He sounded pretty upset though. Everything okay? Family stuff. Nothing that affects the business. Understood. Let me know if you need anything. Jessica showed up at the shop 20 minutes later. I saw her through the window, parked illegally in the loading zone, practically running to the door. I unlocked it before she could start pounding. Explain, she demanded, pushing past me into the showroom. Explain how you own this building. Investment group, I said simply, returning to my workbench. We bought it 7 years ago. With what money? You were barely scraping by back then. I saved well. Made smart investments. Had good partners. Her face flushed red, her hands clenched at her sides. You let me think I had helped you. You let me believe I'd done you this huge favor. You did help, I said calmly. You connected me with the property management company. They've been excellent. I appreciated the referral. Don't patronize me. You made a fool of me. I never claimed you owned the building. You assumed that. I didn't correct you, but I never lied. This whole time you've been letting me think. She stopped, breathing hard. Everyone thinks I set you up here. I've been telling people for 3 years that I helped launch your business. You did help. The introduction was valuable. That's not the same and you know it. Her voice rose. I've been making threats about your lease. I threatened you last night. Yes, I agreed. You did. She stared at me and I watched the realization settle over her. All those times she'd used the shop as leverage. All those little comments about family loyalty and remembering who helped whom. Every single one had been based on a fiction she'd created in her own mind. Why didn't you say something before? Her voice was quieter now, but there was still an accusatory edge to it. Because it didn't matter, until you used it to justify hurting my son. I didn't hurt him. I just made a seating choice. You humiliated him in front of the entire family. You implied he wasn't good enough to sit with his cousins. And then you threatened me with homelessness when I left to protect him from that environment. Jessica's jaw worked soundlessly for a moment. It was just a joke. He's too sensitive. He's 10. And it wasn't a joke. It was cruelty. Oh, and you're so perfect? Hiding this from the family for years. I didn't hide anything. I just didn't broadcast my financial portfolio at Thanksgiving dinner. But you felt entitled to wield what you thought was power over me. That says more about you than it does about me. She turned toward the door, then back to me. Mom's going to hear about this. I'm sure she will. Everyone's going to know you made a fool of me. You made a fool of yourself, Jessica. I just stopped protecting you from the consequences. After she left, I locked the door again and returned to the cherrywood desk. My hands were steady as I worked the sandpaper across the grain. No shaking, no adrenaline crash. Just the quiet satisfaction of finally drawing a boundary that should have been drawn years ago. My phone rang an hour later. My mother. Jessica says you've been lying to the family about your finances. No, Mom. Jessica made assumptions about my finances. I didn't correct them because it wasn't relevant. She's very upset. She says you humiliated her. She humiliated my son at dinner. I left quietly. She texted me a threat about my shop lease. I sent her the ownership papers. Cause and effect. There was a long pause. She says you own the building. I'm part of an investment group that owns it, yes. Another pause. Your father never mentioned you were doing well financially. Dad didn't know. I don't discuss my investments with the family. There's never seemed to be a point. Well. My mother's voice was tight. This is all very dramatic. You could have just let Marcus sit at the small table. He would have been fine. No, Mom. He wouldn't have been fine. And I'm not going to teach him that accepting disrespect is the price of family harmony. Jessica's family. You're going to ruin your relationship with her over this. Jessica ruined the relationship when she decided my son wasn't good enough for the main table. I'm just declining to pretend it didn't happen. My mother hung up without saying goodbye. The texts and calls continued throughout the day. David called to mediate. My aunt sent a long message about family forgiveness. Jessica's husband, Tom, left a voicemail suggesting we were both being unreasonable. I responded to none of them. That evening, I picked Marcus up from his after-school program. He was quiet on the drive home. Mom, are we not going to see Aunt Jessica anymore? Not for a while, probably. Because of me? Because of how she treated you? And because she tried to threaten me when I stood up for you? He was quiet for another moment. Did she really think she could kick us out of your shop? She thought she had that power, yes. But you own it? I'm one of the owners, yes. That's pretty cool. I smiled. It has its moments. Are you mad at her? No, buddy. I'm just done accepting certain behaviors. There's a difference. He nodded slowly, processing. Can we still get pizza sometimes even when it's not because of bad family dinners? Absolutely. 3 days later, the property management company forwarded me an email. Jessica had contacted them, asking about potential lease violations and substandard business practices at my unit. Tom replied professionally that all tenants were in good standing and that any concerns about specific units should be directed to the tenant or owner. I forwarded the email to my lawyer with a brief note, asking her to document it, just in case. Jessica sent one more text 2 weeks later. You could have just told me. I finally responded. You could have just been kind to my son. She didn't reply. Christmas came and went. We spent it with friends instead of family. Marcus seemed lighter somehow, less anxious about measuring up to standards that had never made sense in the first place. My mother called on New Year's Eve. Jessica wants to apologize. Then she can call me herself. She's embarrassed. That's not my problem to solve, Mom. When did you become so hard? When I realized that being soft was teaching my son to accept mistreatment as love. She hung up again. The shop continued to thrive. The investment group bought another property in March. Marcus made the select soccer team and started talking about trying out for the debate club. And every time I unlocked the door to my shop, I felt the quiet satisfaction of knowing the space was mine. Not because someone had done me a favor, not because I owed anyone anything, but because I'd built it myself. The July sun beat down on my parents' backyard as smoke rose from the grill. My brother Marcus stood there like a king, flipping burgers with exaggerated flair while his wife, Jennifer, documented everything on her phone for social media. Their twin boys, both wearing designer sneakers that cost more than my monthly grocery budget, ran circles around the yard. My son Daniel, 7 years old, tugged at my sleeve. Mom, can I have a burger? I'm really hungry. I smiled down at him. Of course, honey. Let's go ask Uncle Marcus. We walked over to the grill where Marcus was holding court, telling Dad and our cousin Trevor about his latest business expansion. He'd opened a third auto repair shop last month and hadn't stopped talking about it since. Uncle Marcus? Daniel said politely. Can I please have a burger? Marcus looked down at my son, then at me, then back at Daniel. His expression shifted into something I'd seen too many times before. Pity mixed with contempt. Those are only for kids with a future, he said loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. Kids whose parents can actually provide for them. The backyard went quiet. Dad looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Mom busied herself with the potato salad. Jennifer laughed, that high-pitched giggle she used whenever Marcus said something cruel. Trevor just shook his head and walked away. Aunt Patricia nodded from her lawn chair, setting down her wine glass with a disapproving click. Marcus has a point, dear. You really should think about Daniel's future instead of that little apartment you're renting. When are you going to get serious about your career? Uncle Robert chimed in, walking over from the beverage table with his characteristic smirk. My accountant was just telling me about investment opportunities last week. Real wealth-building strategies. Maybe if you'd made better choices earlier in life, you could afford to give Daniel what he needs. It's never too late to start, though. Marcus flipped another burger, clearly enjoying the audience. Some people just don't have the entrepreneurial mindset. Not everyone can run a successful business. It takes vision, dedication, real sacrifice. Daniel's hand tightened in mine. I could feel him trying not to cry. My 7-year-old son was learning what it felt like to be looked down on by his own family. I understand, I said quietly. I took the paper plate from Daniel's hand and set it on the table. Come on, sweetheart. Let's go home. But I'm hungry, Daniel whispered. I know. We'll get something on the way. As we walked toward the gate, I heard Marcus call out, "Don't forget the family investment meeting next week." Oh wait, that's only for people who actually contribute to the family business. More laughter. I kept walking, my hand on Daniel's shoulder. In the car, Daniel finally let the tears fall. Why doesn't Uncle Marcus like us? It's complicated, honey. Is it because we don't have a big house like his? I gripped the steering wheel tighter. Uncle Marcus doesn't understand everything about our life. That's okay. We stopped at a diner on the way home, one of those classic chrome and vinyl places that served breakfast all day. Daniel ordered a burger and fries, extra pickles, and I watched him eat, thinking about the past 5 years. About the choices I'd made that my family considered failures. About the late nights they knew nothing about, the conference calls at midnight with Tokyo and London. About the phone calls and meetings they'd never understand, the negotiations and acquisitions that happened in boardrooms they'd never see. Daniel wiped ketchup from his chin. This is a really good burger, Mom. Better than Uncle Marcus's would have been? He grinned. Way better. That smile made everything worth it. That night, after I put Daniel to bed, I sat in my small living room with a cup of tea. The apartment was quiet. Humble. Nothing impressive by my family's standards. But it was ours, and it was exactly what I needed it to be. At 11:55 my phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Just so we're clear, you disrespected me today, walking out like that in front of everyone. Remember who guaranteed your business loan when you were trying to start that consulting thing 5 years ago? Remember who believed in you when nobody else did? You owe me some respect. I stared at the message for a long moment. The consulting thing. That's what he called it. 5 years ago, when I'd asked for help starting my financial consulting business, Marcus had laughed in my face. I'd gone to him because I'd always looked up to him, my successful older brother. You, a consultant, he'd said. You barely graduated college. Who's going to take financial advice from you? When I applied for a small business loan, the bank required a guarantor. Marcus eventually agreed, but only after making me beg. Only after holding it over my head at every family gathering. He signed the papers, convinced I'd fail within a year and that he'd never actually have to pay anything. What Marcus didn't know was what happened 6 months after he guaranteed that loan. I opened my laptop and pulled up the files I'd been reviewing earlier that evening. Bank documents. Transfer papers. Ownership records. Then I typed my response. Marcus, I appreciate you bringing up the loan guarantee. I've been meaning to discuss that with you. I'm attaching the bank ownership transfer documents. As of 14 months ago, I own First National Bank. The same bank that holds your business loans for all 3 auto shops. The same bank that guaranteed your expansion. I also own the mortgage on Mom and Dad's house, which you refinanced last year for your second shop. Check your email. I hit send and attached the documents. Then I sent a second message. Also attached. The loan default notice that will be sent to you tomorrow morning. You're 3 days late on your payment for the third shop. The grace period ended today. As the new owner, I've implemented stricter policies. My phone rang immediately. Marcus. I didn't answer. Instead, I forwarded him another document. The purchase agreement from 14 months ago when I'd bought First National Bank through my investment firm. The same bank he'd been using for years, never knowing who really owned it. My phone exploded with calls. Marcus. Jennifer. Dead. I silenced it and sent one more email. This one went to the bank's senior loan officer, copying Marcus. Please proceed with the standard late payment protocol for Marcus Thompson's account. A 3-day late notice was issued. The next step is the formal default process and potential acceleration of the full loan amount. He has 72 hours to bring all accounts current, including penalties. The calls kept coming. I made myself another cup of tea. Finally, at 12:30, I answered Marcus's call. What the hell is this? He shouted before I could say hello. You own the bank? That's impossible. You're a consultant. You live in a tiny apartment. I am a consultant, I said calmly. I consult for Fortune 500 companies on acquisition strategy. My firm handles portfolio management for several high-net-worth clients. We purchased First National 14 months ago as part of a larger investment strategy. This is insane. You can't do this to family. Do what, Marcus? Enforce standard banking policies? You're late on your payment. By 3 days. There's always a grace period. There was. It ended tonight. The new ownership implemented stricter protocols last quarter. You would have known this if you'd read the notices we sent, or if you'd bothered to ask me about my actual career instead of calling it that consulting thing. Jennifer's voice shrieked in the background. Tell her about the social media post. Tell her we'll ruin her reputation. I took a sip of tea. Marcus, you're currently in default on $340,000 in business loans. Your shops are leveraged at 92%. If I call the loans, you'll lose everything in about 6 weeks. I suggest you focus on making your payment rather than social media threats. You wouldn't do that. We're family. Family, I repeated. Is that what you told Daniel today? When you said burgers were only for kids with a future? When you humiliated a 7-year-old child at a family barbecue? Silence on the other end. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. You have 72 hours to make your payment plus late fees. That's $12,800. After that, we proceed with standard default protocols. I don't have that kind of cash right now. Everything's tied up in inventory. Then you should have made your payment on time. Please, Marcus said, and I heard something I'd never heard from him before, fear. Can't you just extend the grace period? For family. The same family that mocked my son today? The same family that spent 5 years reminding me that you guaranteed my loan? Speaking of which, I paid that loan off 4 years ago. But you enjoyed holding it over my head too much for me to mention it. Dad's voice came through the phone. Marcus must have put it on speaker. Sweetheart, be reasonable. Marcus made a mistake today. He'll apologize. Will he, Dad? Because you stood right there when he refused to feed your grandson. You said nothing. Mom's voice followed, tearful. We didn't know it would hurt Daniel's feelings. You're being vindictive. I'm being a banker. If Marcus were any other client, he'd already be in formal default. I'm giving him 72 hours as a courtesy. What do you want? Marcus asked. An apology? Fine. I'm sorry I said that to Daniel. Happy now? I don't want anything, Marcus. I want you to pay your loan on time like the contract requires. Whether you apologize to Daniel is between you and your conscience. I could hear Jennifer crying in the background. Dad trying to negotiate. Mom asking how this happened. Uncle Robert's voice joined the chaos. This is extortion. I know lawyers. Excellent, I said. Have them review the loan documents. They'll confirm that everything I'm doing is completely legal and standard banking practice. In fact, Marcus received preferential treatment for the past 14 months because I instructed the loan department not to flag his account for special attention. That courtesy ends now. I hung up and blocked their numbers for the night. I needed sleep. The next morning, I woke to 73 missed calls and 42 text messages. I ignored them all and made Daniel breakfast. Pancakes his favorite. Are you okay, Mom? he asked, studying my face. I'm perfect, honey. Eat your breakfast. At 9, my phone rang from a number I didn't recognize. I answered. This is David Park, attorney for Marcus Thompson. We need to discuss these loan acceleration threats. Mr. Park, there are no threats. There is a contract that your client signed and standard banking policies that apply to all borrowers. Marcus is in default. He has 68 hours remaining to cure that default. My client tells me you're his sister. This is a clear conflict of interest. I'm the owner of the bank. My brother is a borrower. There's no conflict. If anything, he's received preferential treatment. That ends now. 68 hours, Mr. Park. I hung up. At 10, the bank senior loan officer called. Ms. Thompson, we've received several calls from Marcus Thompson's attorney. How would you like us to proceed? Standard protocol. No exceptions. If he doesn't cure the default within the specified time, we initiate acceleration proceedings on all 3 loans. Understood. Also, we received his payment this morning. $12,800. Wire transfer at 9:45. I smiled. Good. Please confirm receipt and update his account status. And John. From now on, Marcus Thompson gets the same treatment as any other commercial borrower. No special consideration. Of course. Will you be coming to the board meeting this afternoon? Yes. I need to review the Q3 projections. After I hung up, I sat quietly for a moment. Marcus had found the money. Probably borrowed it from Dad or sold something. It didn't matter. He'd paid. My phone buzzed. A text from a new number. That. Your mother is very upset. This isn't who you are. I responded. This is exactly who I am. You just never bothered to ask. 3 days later, I received a formal letter via certified mail. An apology from Marcus to Daniel. Carefully worded. Probably written by his lawyer. It meant nothing, but it was something. 2 weeks after that, at Mom's birthday dinner, the family was different. Quieter. Marcus and Jennifer arrived late and left early. Nobody asked about my apartment or my job. Nobody made comments about Daniel's future. When Daniel asked Uncle Marcus if he could have a piece of cake, Marcus said yes immediately and cut him an extra-large slice. Small victories. That night, as I tucked Daniel into bed, he said, Uncle Marcus was nicer today. Yes, he was. Did you talk to him? In a way. Good, Daniel said, yawning. I like it better when people are nice. I kissed his forehead. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. Later, in my home office, I reviewed the bank's quarterly reports. First National was performing above projections. The acquisition had been one of my best decisions, not because of Marcus, but because it was a solid investment that would help secure Daniel's actual future. The future my family had mocked at a barbecue. The future I'd been building in silence while they assumed I was failing. My phone buzzed. An email from Trevor, my cousin who'd walked away from the grill that day. I heard what happened. Good for you. Marcus needed to learn that lesson. Also, my company is looking for a financial consultant for an acquisition we're planning. Any chance you're taking new clients? I smiled and typed back. Send me the details. I'd be happy to review them. The next family gathering would be interesting. But that was fine. I'd spent 5 years being underestimated. I could handle being respected. Or feared. Either worked. What mattered was that Daniel would never again be told he didn't have a future. Because his mother had been building that future the whole time, one acquisition at a time, one investment at a time, while they were too busy judging to notice. Sometimes the quietest person in the room is the most powerful. They just choose not to announce it until absolutely necessary. And refusing a hungry child a burger at a family barbecue? That made it absolutely necessary. The Sunday dinner table was set with Mom's best china. My daughter Emma, 6 years old, had barely touched her vegetables when she spotted the chocolate cake on the counter. Grandma, can I have some cake, please? Emma asked, her voice small and polite. Mom didn't even look up from her wine glass. Premium treats are for premium grandkids, sweetheart. The table went silent for exactly 3 seconds. Then my sister Jennifer laughed first, breaking the tension everyone pretended didn't exist. Mom, that's hilarious, Jennifer said, cutting herself a large slice. Emma, maybe next time. My brother Michael nodded while chewing. Yeah, we save the good stuff for special occasions. Emma's face fell. She looked at me with confusion in her eyes. trying to understand why she wasn't special enough for cake. My daughter didn't know that I'd been the family disappointment for 15 years. She didn't know that her grandmother had spent the last 6 years making subtle comments about Emma's father leaving us, about my choices, about how I'd ruined my life. I reached for Emma's hand. We should go. Already. Mom set down her glass with a clink. You just got here 2 hours ago. I think we've had enough family time for today. I kept my voice level, pleasant even. Jennifer smirked at Michael. So sensitive. It was just a joke. I helped Emma into her jacket, taking my time with each button. Mom watched from her chair, that familiar expression of vague disappointment etched across her face. The same look she'd given me when I chose State College over an Ivy League. The same look when I married David. The same look when I kept Emma after the divorce. You're really leaving over cake? Mom asked. We're leaving because my daughter asked a simple question and got humiliated instead of an answer. I picked up my purse. Come on, Emma. Dad finally spoke up from his end of the table. Don't be dramatic. Your mother didn't mean anything by it. She never does, I said. The drive home was quiet. Emma stared out the window, processing something no 6-year-old should have to process. I'd spent my whole life trying to be good enough for them. The right schools, the right career, the right husband. And still I was the punchline. Still I was premium adjacent at best. We stopped for ice cream on the way home. Emma got a double scoop with sprinkles. At 11:47 p.m. my phone buzzed on the nightstand. Mom's text appeared. I've been thinking about the house situation. Your name is still on the deed from when Dad put all 3 kids on the title for tax purposes. We need to discuss transfer options before the estate planning meeting next month. I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I opened my documents folder and found the file I'd been sitting on for 3 weeks. The purchase agreement, the title transfer papers, the closing documents from the real estate attorney. I attached all 6 files to a reply text. The house was sold 17 days ago. Closing was last Tuesday. You should receive the formal notice from the title company tomorrow morning. The new owners take possession in 43 days. I added one more line. Premium property for premium people. Then I turned off my phone and went to sleep. The next morning started with 17 missed calls. I made Emma breakfast first. Scrambled eggs, toast, fresh strawberries. We ate together while I braided her hair for school. My phone rang again at 8:15 a.m. I finally answered. What did you do? Mom's voice was shrill, panicked in a way I'd never heard before. I exercised my legal rights as a property owner, I said calmly. The house had 3 owners on the deed, Dad, you and me. Under the tenancy agreement, any owner could initiate a sale if they provided proper notice to co-owners, which I did via certified mail 6 weeks ago. You can't just sell our house. I sold my third. But since no buyer wanted a partial interest, the court-ordered partition sale went through. It's all legal. My attorney made sure of it. This is insane. Where are we supposed to live? I poured myself more coffee. I assumed the same place you expected Emma and me to live when you refinanced the property 8 years ago and took out that second mortgage without telling me, the one that nearly destroyed my credit when payments were missed. Silence. How did you? I'm not stupid, Mom. I'm just quiet. There's a difference. I checked the time. I need to get Emma to school. Your father wants to talk to you. I'm sure he does. Have him call my lawyer. I hung up. The title company called at 9:32 a.m. to confirm that all parties had been notified. The sale price was $847,000. After splitting it 3 ways and paying off the mortgages, my portion came to $186,000. I'd already deposited the check. Jennifer called next. You're really going to make Mom and Dad homeless? They have 63 days to find new housing. That's more notice than Mom gave Emma before humiliating her at dinner. It was a joke about take. No, I said. It was 15 years of jokes. 15 years of being less than. Of watching my daughter be treated like a second-class family member because her mother doesn't meet the family standards. You're being vindictive. I'm being fair. They own 1/3 of the proceeds. They can buy a condo. Michael's text came through at 10:15 a.m. Dad's having chest pains. Mom says you're giving him a heart attack. I forwarded the message to my attorney with a note. Document this attempted emotional manipulation. My lawyer, Patricia, Called me at 11 a.m. Your father's attorney reached out. They want to negotiate. Negotiate what? The sale is complete. They want you to use your portion to help them buy a new house, co-sign on a mortgage. I laughed. Actually laughed. No. I told them you'd say that. They're threatening to sue for the full property value, claiming you undervalued it in the partition sale. The property was appraised by a court-appointed assessor at $820,000. We sold for $847,000, above value. I was in my car now heading to my office. They can sue all they want. There's one more thing, Patricia said carefully. They found out about the other properties. My hand tightened on the steering wheel. How? Public records. Your brother did a property search on your name. Of course he did. The family group chat exploded at 1:47 p.m. Michael, you own 4 rental properties? Jennifer, this whole time you've been pretending to struggle as a single mom? Dad, we need to talk about this immediately. I typed one response. I bought my first rental property 12 years ago with money Grandma left me. You know, the grandmother you all forgot about after she died. I visited her every week at the nursing home. Every single week for 3 years. She left me $40,000. I invested it. I'm good at investing. Mom, you let us think you were barely making it. I am a single mother barely making it. I'm also smart enough to build assets. Those things aren't mutually exclusive. Jennifer, this is unbelievable. You've been playing poor while sitting on all this property. I've been living modestly and investing wisely. What have you been doing with your money? Oh right, spending it on premium things. The calls continued all week. Dad's lawyer. Mom's financial advisor. Even my aunt got involved, sending long emails about family loyalty and forgiveness. I ignored most of it. Emma's school called on Thursday. Your mother is here, claiming she has permission to pick up Emma. She absolutely does not, I said immediately. She's not on the approved list. She's quite insistent. Call the police if she doesn't leave. I'll be there in 10 minutes. When I arrived, Mom was in the office arguing with the principal. She turned when she saw me. I just wanted to see my granddaughter. The granddaughter who isn't premium enough for cake? Kept my voice level. Emma, come with me please. Mom reached out. Please. Can we just talk? We can talk through lawyers. I took Emma's hand. Stay away from my daughter. The principal looked uncomfortable. Mrs. Anderson, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the premises. That night, Emma asked me why Grandma came to school. Sometimes adults make mistakes and don't know how to fix them, I said, tucking her blanket around her. Is Grandma sorry? I don't know, baby. Maybe. Are you still mad about the cake? I brushed hair from her forehead. I'm not mad about cake. I'm mad that someone made you feel like you weren't good enough. You're always good enough. Always. Emma thought about this. Do we have enough money now? From selling the house. Smart kid. We're going to be just fine. Can we get a dog? I smiled. Maybe. We'll see. The formal dinner invitation came via certified mail 2 weeks later. Mom wanted to apologize. The whole family would be there. Please bring Emma. I declined via email. Mom showed up at my office 3 days later. Security called before letting her up. 5 minutes, I told her. She looked smaller somehow. Older. I'm sorry. For which part? All of it. The cake comment. The years of criticism. Making you feel less than. She twisted her hands together. Your father and I have been talking. We've been terrible. Yes, you have. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I see it now. How we treated you, how we treated Emma. Her voice cracked. She's my granddaughter. He's perfect. And I made her feel unwanted. I didn't respond. We found a condo, Mom continued. Smaller. Manageable. We're downsizing like we should have done years ago. She pulled out an envelope. This is a check for Emma's college fund. It's not enough. It's not anything close to enough. But it's a start. I took the envelope. Inside was a check for $25,000. I'm not asking you to cash it, Mom said. I'm asking you to consider letting us try again. Emma. With you. Mom. Your father had a health scare last week. A real one, not the manipulation Michael texted about. It made us both realize we've wasted so much time being proud and judgmental. She wiped her eyes. I don't want to die having my granddaughter think she's not premium enough. I set the check on my desk. Emma has therapy on Thursdays now. Because of the cake incident and everything that came after. She's 6 years old and needs therapy to understand why her family doesn't value her. Mom's face crumbled. If you want back into our lives, you start there. You pay for the therapy. You attend the family sessions the therapist recommends. You do the work. I stood up. Your 5 minutes are up. She nodded, collecting her purse. At the door she turned back. You were right to sell the house. We never appreciated what we had. Any of it. After she left, I sat at my desk for a long time staring at the check. Emma deserved grandparents who loved her unconditionally. But she also deserved a mother who protected her from people who couldn't. I deposited the check into Emma's college fund that afternoon. But I didn't call Mom back. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Some things, even premium grandmothers, can't be bought back.